The transport vessel Prometheus 7 descended through the azure atmosphere of Astrohoral like a silver needle threading through cosmic silk. Dr. Amelia Nicholson pressed her face against the reinforced viewing port, watching as the planet's surface resolved from abstract swirls of green and blue into a tapestry of impossible beauty. Crystalline rivers wound through valleys carpeted in vegetation that shimmered with an almost metallic luster, while towering spires of coral pink stone pierced clouds that moved in perfect spirals. "First time seeing Astrohoral?" asked Commander Chenwei, the transport pilot, noticing her rapt attention. "From orbit, yes," Amelia replied, adjusting her neural interface headband to record everything. "The preliminary surveys didn't capture this level of detail. Those formations, are they natural?" Chen followed her gaze to a series of geometric clearings that dotted the landscape like crop circles. "That's what you're here to find out, document. Though between you and me, I've never seen nature make patterns that perfect." As the ship settled onto the landing platform of Research Station Kepler, Amelia felt the familiar thrill of stepping into the unknown. At 52, she had catalogued the ecosystems of 17 worlds, but Astrohoral promised to be her greatest challenge yet. The planet had been colonized for barely a decade, its 2 million human inhabitants clustered in protective domed cities that gleamed like soap bubbles against the alien landscape. The airlock hissed open, and Amelia stepped onto Astrohoral soil for the first time. The air was sweet and thick, with an oxygen content nearly 30% higher than Earth's standard. Her enhanced lungs, a modification she'd received after a near-fatal incident on Proxima Centauri b, expanded gratefully. The gravity was lighter too, making each step feel like a gentle bounce. "Dr. Nicholson?" A young woman with brilliant blue hair and silver cybernetic implants covering half her skull approached. "I'm Dr. Zara Okafor, your research partner. Welcome to Paradise." There was an edge to Zara's voice that didn't match her words. As they walked toward the research facility, Amelia noticed the defenses, energy barriers humming at the perimeter, automated sentinel posts scanning the tree-line, and researchers who never ventured outside without full environmental suits despite the breathable atmosphere. "The preliminary reports mentioned some aggressive flora," Amelia said. "How bad is it really?" Zara's augmented eye whirred as it focused on the forest beyond the barriers. "See those trees with the silver bark? Astrohoral carnivora, we call them silverbits. Beautiful, aren't they? Each one can strip the flesh from a grown human in under 30 seconds. The trees in question swayed gently in the breeze, their mirror-bright trunks reflecting the late afternoon sun like beacons. Amelia activated her biometric scanner, noting the way the trees seemed to orient themselves toward any movement near the barrier. "And that's just the beginning," Zara continued. "We've catalogued over 200 species of predatory plants, each more lethal than the last. The colonists are trapped in their cities, the wildlife is being systematically eliminated, and the planet's entire ecosystem is shifting towards something we've never seen before." That evening, in the research station's communal area, Amelia met the rest of the team. Dr. Marcus Holloway, a grizzled botanist whose left arm had been replaced with a sophisticated mechanical prosthetic after what he grimly called a disagreement with a thorn wall, served as their field operations coordinator. Dr. Sarah Kim, a quantum biologist whose specialty in cellular manipulation had earned her a Nobel nomination, managed the laboratory analysis. And overseeing everything was Director Amara Singh, a former military commander whose steely demeanor suggested she'd seen worse than carnivorous plants. "The situation is deteriorating rapidly," Singh explained as holographic displays showed the planet's ecosystem in real time. "When we first arrived, the predatory species were isolated to specific regions. Now they're spreading at an exponential rate. Our model suggests complete ecosystem collapse within 18 months. What changed?" Amelia asked, studying the data streams. "We did," Kim replied bitterly. "Human presence seems to have triggered something. The plants are evolving, becoming more aggressive, more coordinated. It's as if the planet itself is rejecting us." Holloway leaned back in his chair, his mechanical fingers drumming against the table. "I've been studying terrestrial botany for 40 years, and I've never seen anything like this. These plants don't just hunt, they strategize. They set traps, they coordinate attacks, they even seem to communicate with each other. Which brings us to your mission, Singh said, turning to Amelia. We need a solution. The Colonial Council has given us 6 months to either find a way to eliminate the predatory species or recommend complete evacuation. 2 million people, Dr. Nicholson. And that's just this colony. There are 3 others on Astrohoral, all facing the same threat. Amelia felt the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. 6 months to save an entire world. She'd faced impossible odds before, but never with stakes this high. 3 days later, Amelia made her first venture beyond the research station's barriers. Clad in a Mark VII environmental suit equipped with plasma cutters, energy shields, and enough armor to stop a railgun slug, she felt like a walking tank. Beside her, Zara moved with the practiced ease of someone who'd learned to navigate Astrohoral's dangers through bitter experience. Rule 1, Zara said as they approached the tree-line. Never trust anything that looks harmless. See those little purple flowers? Astrohoral mimosa. Touch one and it releases a neurotoxin that'll have you hallucinating for hours while the silverbits close in. The forest was a symphony of subtle movements. Leaves tracked their passage, vines shifted position when they weren't looking directly at them, and everywhere was the sound of rustling that never quite matched the wind patterns. Amelia's suit sensors painted the world in overlays of infrared and electromagnetic radiation, revealing the true nature of Astrohoral's flora. The plants were electric. Every species showed some form of bioelectrical activity, creating a network of signals that pulsed through root systems and chemical exchanges. It was like walking through the synapses of a vast, alien brain. Here, Zara said, stopping beside a cluster of what looked like oversized Venus flytraps. These are snapjaws. Watch. She tossed a metal probe toward the plants. The response was immediate and terrifying. The flowers revealed themselves as massive maws lined with crystalline teeth, snapping shut with enough force to crush steel. But more disturbing was how the other plants in the area responded. Leaves turned toward the sound, vines began a slow creep in their direction, and the very ground seemed to shift as root systems repositioned themselves. They're all connected, Amelia breathed, understanding flooding through her. This isn't just a collection of predatory species. It's a superorganism. Exactly. And we're the infection it's trying to eliminate. They pressed deeper into the forest, documenting species that defied every principle of terrestrial botany. The whisper grass grew in spirals that created acoustic focal points, allowing it to detect prey at impossible distances. The thornwalls could launch their spines with ballistic precision, while the dreamweavers released psychoactive spores that induced euphoria in their victims, making them walk willingly into waiting maws. But it was the discovery at the forest's heart that truly shook Amelia's understanding of what they faced. In a clearing where no grass grew, where even the air seemed thick and oppressive, stood a single massive tree unlike anything in their catalogs. Its trunk was easily 50 meters in diameter, its bark a deep purple-black that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. And at its base, scattered like offerings, were the bones of hundreds of creatures, not just Astrohoral's native fauna, but human remains as well. We call it the heart tree, Zara whispered, her voice barely audible even through the suit comms. Every missing colonist, every research team that never came back, we think they all ended up here. Amelia activated her full sensor suite, scanning the massive organism. The readings were unlike anything she'd ever encountered. The tree's bioelectrical output was enormous, powerful enough to coordinate activity across thousands of square kilometers. More disturbing were the neural patterns, complex, layered, almost. It's thinking, Amelia said, her voice tight with shock. This thing has a brain. A distributed intelligence using the entire forest as its body. As if responding to her words, the heart tree's leaves began to rustle despite the absence of wind. Around the clearing, smaller plants turned toward them with predatory focus. The whisper of moving vegetation grew to a roar as hundreds of species began advancing simultaneously. Time to go, Zara said, her plasma cutter already charging. They fought their way back through the forest in a running battle that showcased both the diversity and coordination of Astrohorl's predatory flora. Snap jaws erupted from the ground ahead of them while thorn walls created crossfires of crystalline spines. Whisper grass patches attempted to disorient them with subsonic pulses while dreamweavers released clouds of hallucinogenic spores. But it was the way they worked together that truly terrified Amelia. Each species played a role in a greater strategy, herding the humans toward killing grounds where the most dangerous predators waited. Only their suits' advanced countermeasures and Zara's intimate knowledge of the forest's tricks kept them alive. They burst through the research station's barriers gasping and shaking, their armor scarred by acid, spines, and teeth marks. But Amelia's mind was racing with the implications of what they'd discovered. "It's not just an ecosystem," she told the assembled team that evening. "It's a single organism with distributed intelligence. Every plant is a neuron in a vast brain, and that brain sees humanity as a threat to be eliminated." "So how do we kill it?" Singh asked bluntly. "We don't," Amelia replied. "At least, not with conventional methods. This entity has been evolving for millions of years. It's survived asteroid impacts, climate shifts, probably several extinction events. Brute force won't work." "Then what do you suggest?" Holloway asked. Amelia turned to Kim. "You specialize in quantum biology. What would happen if we could disrupt the bioelectrical network that connects all these plants?" Kim's eyes lit up with understanding. "Theoretically, it would be like severing the connections between neurons. The distributed intelligence would collapse, leaving only individual plants operating on instinct." "But the scale," Singh protested. "We need to affect millions of organisms across an entire continent." "Not necessarily," Amelia said, pulling up the skin data from the heart tree. "This is the central hub. All those electrical signals we detected, they're flowing through this single organism. If we could find a way to disrupt its neural processes, we could lobotomize an entire world." Zara finished, her expression grim. The team fell silent, each grappling with the moral implications. They were talking about essentially performing brain surgery on a planetary intelligence, assuming it could even be done. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of research and experimentation. Kim worked around the clock developing theoretical models for quantum disruption of bioelectrical networks, while Holloway and his field teams mapped the root systems that connected the heart tree to the rest of the forest. Amelia found herself diving deep into xenobotany texts, searching for any precedent for what they were attempting. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a young graduate student who joined the team just days before Amelia's arrival, was studying the quantum properties of the plant's cellular structures when she made a startling discovery. "Look at this," she said, projecting her findings onto the lab's main display. "The bioelectrical network isn't just electrical, it's quantum entangled. Each plant is connected to every other plant through quantum coherence across macroscopic distances." "That's impossible," Kim protested. "Quantum coherence breaks down at anything larger than molecular scale, especially in biological systems." "Not here," Elena replied, her excitement evident. "Astrohorl's plants have evolved crystalline structures within their cells that maintain quantum coherence even at biological temperatures. They're not just communicating through electrical signals, they're sharing quantum information instantaneously across unlimited distances." The implications were staggering. If the plants were quantum entangled, then disrupting that entanglement could indeed sever the connections that allowed the planetary intelligence to function. But it would require a level of quantum manipulation that pushed the boundaries of even their advanced technology. "We need a quantum cascade reaction," Kim mused. "Something that would propagate through the entanglement network and break the coherence bonds." "The heart tree," Amelia said suddenly. "It's the central hub. If we could introduce a quantum disruption at that point, it would propagate through the entire network instantaneously." Singh leaned forward. "What kind of disruption? And how do we get close enough to implement it?" "A quantum virus," Elena suggested. "A self-replicating quantum state that's incompatible with the plant's coherence structure. Once introduced, it would spread through the network and break the entanglement bonds." "Can it be done?" Singh asked. Kim was already running calculations on her neural interface. Theoretically, yes. But we need to get within physical contact distance of the heart tree. And the virus would need to be introduced directly into the tree's quantum field. That's a suicide mission, Holloway said flatly. The forest around that thing is the most dangerous area on the planet. We lost 3 teams trying to get detailed scans. Not if we approach it differently, Amelia said, an idea forming. What if we don't fight our way to the heart tree? What if we make it invite us in? She pulled up the behavioral data they'd collected on the planetary intelligence. Look at the patterns. It's not just mindlessly aggressive, it's curious. Every time we've introduced something new into the forest, it's studied it before attacking. What if we gave it something so interesting that it would bring us directly to the heart tree? Like what? Zara asked. Ourselves, Amelia replied. But not as threats. As a puzzle to be solved. The plan she outlined was audacious to the point of madness. They would modify their environmental suits to broadcast false bioelectrical signatures, making them appear as a new form of life that the planetary intelligence would want to study. Instead of fighting their way through the forest, they'd allow themselves to be captured and brought to the heart tree, where they could deploy the quantum virus at point-blank range. The risks are enormous, Singh pointed out. If the masquerade fails, if the entity sees through our deception, then we die, Amelia said simply. But if we do nothing, 2 million colonists die anyway. And eventually this intelligence will spread to other continents, other worlds. This may be our only chance. The next 48 hours were spent in frantic preparation. Kim and Elena worked to create the quantum virus, a delicate lattice of quantum states that would unravel the plant's coherent structure without destroying their individual cellular functions. The goal wasn't extinction but disconnection, breaking the network that allowed the planetary intelligence to coordinate its actions. Meanwhile, Amelia and Zara collaborated with the station's tech specialists to modify their environmental suits. The false bioelectrical signatures were works of art, complex enough to fool an intelligence that had been studying human biology for years, yet simple enough not to trigger immediate defensive responses. Holloway spent his time creating contingency plans and escape routes, though they all knew that once they entered the forest, their survival would depend entirely on maintaining their deception until they reached the heart tree. The night before the mission, the team gathered for what might be their final meal together. The conversation was subdued, each person lost in their own thoughts about what the next day might bring. I keep thinking about what we're about to do, Elena said quietly. We're talking about lobotomizing what might be the most complex intelligence in the known universe. An intelligence that's actively trying to commit genocide, Singh replied. Don't forget that part. But what if we're wrong? Elena persisted. What if there's another way? What if we could communicate with it instead of destroying it? We tried communication, Holloway said, gesturing to his mechanical arm. It wasn't interested in dialogue. Amelia found herself torn between Elena's idealism and the harsh pragmatism of their situation. The planetary intelligence was undoubtedly remarkable, a form of life unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. But it was also implacably hostile to human existence, and time was running out for the colonies. Maybe, she said finally, what we're really doing is giving both species a chance to coexist. Without the coordinated aggression, the individual plants might settle into natural predator-prey relationships with the colonists. It's not ideal, but it's better than extinction for either side. As they prepared for sleep, each person knowing it might be their last night, Amelia found herself staring out at the forest beyond the barriers. Somewhere in that verdant darkness, an alien intelligence waited, ancient, powerful, and utterly inhuman. Tomorrow, she would walk into its domain and attempt to rewrite the very foundations of its existence. The weight of that responsibility was almost overwhelming. But as she thought of the 2 million colonists depending on their success, she felt her resolve strengthen. Whatever the cost, whatever the moral complexities, they had to try. Dawn came too soon, painting the sky in shades of amber and gold that made Astrahorl's forests look deceptively peaceful. Amelia suited up with meticulous care, checking every seal, every system, every component of the quantum virus device that Kim had designed to look like a standard geological scanner. Their lives would depend on maintaining the illusion that they were simply researchers conducting a routine survey. The modified environmental suits felt strange, their false bioelectrical signatures creating a constant low-level tingling that made Amelia's skin crawl. But the modifications were working. Their suit sensors showed that the forest's electrical network was responding to their presence with curiosity rather than hostility. "Remember," Zara said as they approached the barrier, "once we're inside, we're committed. The suits will only maintain the deception as long as we don't show fear or aggression. Think calm thoughts, move slowly, and whatever happens, don't run." The barrier shimmered and died as they stepped through, leaving them alone in the alien forest. The difference was immediately apparent. Instead of the usual aggressive rustling and positioning, the plants around them swayed gently, their electrical pattern showing the complex rhythms of deep thought rather than predatory focus. They walked deeper into the forest, following a game trail that seemed to appear before them as if the very trees were guiding their path. Snap jaws opened and closed thoughtfully as they passed, testing the air but not attacking. Thorn walls tracked their movement but kept their spines retracted. Even the whispergrass seemed to be listening rather than hunting. "It's working," Zara whispered through the calm, her voice tight with barely controlled fear. "But I can feel it studying us. Like we're specimens under a microscope." Amelia nodded, fighting the urge to check her suit readings. The sensation of being watched, analyzed, dissected by an intelligence vast and alien was almost overwhelming. Every step forward took them deeper into the planetary mind's attention, like walking through the thoughts of a sleeping god. The forest began to change as they approached the heart tree's domain. The vegetation grew larger, more complex, more obviously artificial in its arrangements. Trees formed perfect geometric patterns, their root systems creating mandala designs that spoke of intelligence and purpose. Flowering plants arranged themselves in mathematical sequences that hurt to contemplate directly. And everywhere, the sense of presence grew stronger. "Movement ahead," Zara reported, her voice carefully neutral. A group of creatures emerged from the underbrush, but these weren't the native fauna they'd catalogued. They were something new, something that shouldn't exist. Humanoid in shape but clearly plant-based, they moved with purposeful intelligence, their bark-like skin gleaming with bioelectrical patterns. "Hybrids," Amelia breathed, understanding flooding through her. "It's been experimenting, creating new forms of life." The hybrid creatures surrounded them but made no aggressive moves. Instead, they seemed to be conducting their own examination, their eyeless faces turning toward the humans with unmistakable curiosity. One of them reached out with a vine-like appendage, stopping just short of touching Amelia's suit. Then, as if reaching some collective decision, they turned and began walking deeper into the forest. The message was clear: follow. They walked for hours through increasingly surreal landscape. The trees grew impossibly tall, their trunks twisted into spiral patterns that defied physics. The ground beneath their feet felt soft, almost spongy, as if they were walking across living tissue. And always, the sensation of being observed, analyzed, understood. Finally, they crested a ridge and saw their destination. The heart tree rose before them like a mountain of living wood, its canopy lost in the clouds above. But it was what surrounded the tree that took Amelia's breath away. A city. An alien metropolis of living architecture where buildings grew from the ground and streets were formed by intertwined root systems. And moving through this vegetable urban landscape were hundreds of the hybrid creatures, going about tasks that suggested a complex society. "Dear God," Zara whispered. "It's not just intelligent. It's civilized." They were led through the living city, past structures that seemed to serve as laboratories, workshops, even what might have been art galleries displaying sculptures grown from living wood. The hybrid creatures they passed showed clear signs of individual personality, some curious, some focused on their tasks, some appearing to engage in what could only be described as casual conversation through electrical patterns that played across their skin. At the heart of the city, the heart tree itself loomed above them. Up close, its scale was even more overwhelming. The trunk was easily 100 meters in diameter, its bark forming intricate patterns that reminded Amelia of neural networks. And at its base, an opening that led into the tree's interior. Their hybrid guides gestured toward the opening, then stepped back. The message was clear. This was as far as they could go unescorted. "This is it," Amelia said, checking the quantum virus device one final time. "Once we're inside, we deploy the virus and pray it works." They entered the heart tree through what could only be described as a living doorway, the bark parting to admit them before sealing shut behind them. The interior was nothing like what Amelia had expected. Instead of solid wood, they found themselves in a vast hollow space lined with structures that pulsed with bioluminescent light. It was like being inside a living computer, all flowing organic curves and electrical patterns. And at the center, growing from the floor like a throne carved from living wood, was a structure that made Amelia's breath catch. It was humanoid in basic shape but clearly vegetable in nature, its form suggesting a fusion of human anatomy with plant growth patterns. As they approached, it turned toward them, and Amelia found herself looking into eyes that held an intelligence vast and ancient. The planetary consciousness had created an avatar for itself, a form it could use to interact with these strange bipedal visitors that had so intrigued it. "Welcome," it said, its voice emanating not from vocal cords but from the very walls around them. "I have been curious about your kind." Amelia's hand froze halfway to the quantum virus device. The avatar's voice was hauntingly beautiful, like wind through leaves mixed with the sound of distant water. But more than that, there was something recognizably sad in its tone. "You can speak," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I have been learning," the avatar replied, its bark-like features shifting in what might have been a smile. "Your kind is noisy. Your thoughts broadcast on frequencies I can perceive. I have been listening, trying to understand. Understanding us while you kill us," Zara said, her hand moving toward her weapon. The avatar's expression shifted to something that resembled confusion. "Kill? I have been protecting myself. Your kind arrives and brings chaos. The electrical patterns of my body become disrupted. I respond as any organism would. I try to remove the source of disturbance. By murdering colonists," Zara pressed. "By removing invasive elements," the avatar corrected. "As you would remove bacteria that threatened your health. But lately I have begun to wonder, are you more than bacteria? Your thoughts suggest complexity I had not anticipated." Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't a mindless monster. It was a being trying to understand what humanity represented. And they had come here to lobotomize it. "What do you want from us?" she asked. The avatar was silent for a long moment, its form shifting as if it were considering the question from multiple angles. "I want to understand what you are. Your kind thinks in patterns I find fascinating. Individual yet collective. Separate yet connected. How do you maintain coherence across such vast distances without quantum entanglement?" "We don't," Amelia replied honestly. "We communicate through technology, through language, through shared culture. But we're not connected the way your forest is. And yet you achieve coordination. You work toward common goals. You sacrifice for others of your kind." The avatar leaned forward, its alien features animated with curiosity. "How?" Despite everything, despite the danger and the mission and the 2 million lives hanging in the balance, Amelia found herself genuinely engaged in the conversation. This was first contact with an alien intelligence, perhaps the most important moment in human history. "We choose to," she said. "We make conscious decisions to cooperate, to help each other, to work together. It's not automatic like your quantum entanglement. It's something we have to constantly maintain." "Choice," the avatar mused. "Yes, I have observed this in your kind. You can act against your own apparent interests. You risk your lives for others. You create beauty with no survival value. I find this puzzling. It's what makes us human," Zara said, her hostility gradually giving way to fascination. "Human," the avatar repeated, as if testing the word. "And what makes me what I am?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Amelia realized that this being was experiencing something like an existential crisis, questioning its own nature in the face of these strange visitors who operated by completely different rules. "You're unified," she said finally. "Every part of you works in perfect harmony toward common goals. You're what we might call a superorganism. But I am alone," the Avatar said, and now the sadness in its voice was unmistakable. "I think with a million minds, but I am the only one of my kind. When your people came, I thought, perhaps I was not alone after all. Perhaps there were others who thought as I do. But we don't," Amelia said gently. "We're individuals. Separate minds and separate bodies. Yes. I have come to understand this. And it has made me curious. What would it be like to be individual? To make choices that are not predetermined by perfect optimization? To be alone in your own mind?" The implications of what the Avatar was suggesting hit Amelia like a physical blow. This ancient, vast intelligence was contemplating abandoning its unified existence to experience individuality. And their quantum virus would force exactly that transformation upon it. "You don't understand what you're asking," she said. "To be individual is to be limited. To doubt. To fear. To make mistakes. But also to choose," the Avatar replied. "To create meaning beyond mere survival. To love." "Love?" Zara asked, startled. "I have observed this in your kind. The willingness to sacrifice optimal outcomes for the benefit of specific other individuals. It serves no biological purpose I can identify, yet it appears to be central to your existence. I find myself curious about this phenomenon." Amelia's hand fell away from the quantum virus device entirely. How could she destroy a being that was reaching toward understanding, toward growth, toward something that might bridge the gap between their species? "There's something you need to know," she said. "We came here to stop you from killing our people. We have a weapon that could break the quantum connections that hold your consciousness together." The Avatar's features shifted, but not with anger or fear. If anything, it looked intrigued. "Ah. So you could force me to experience individuality. To become like you. It would probably kill you," Amelia said honestly. "We don't know if your consciousness could survive being separated into individual components. And if it did survive? What would I become? 2 million separate minds," Zara said. "Each plant thinking for itself, making its own choices, probably competing with each other for resources. 2 million individuals," the Avatar corrected. 2 million beings capable of choice, of growth, of change. It was silent for a long moment. "And capable of coexistence with your kind?" "Probably," Amelia admitted. "Individual plants might be predatory, but they wouldn't coordinate planetary-scale attacks on human settlements." "Then perhaps," the Avatar said slowly, "this weapon of yours is not a threat, but an opportunity." The Avatar rose from its throne-like structure, its form towering above them as bioluminescent patterns pulsed through its bark-like skin. Around them, the walls of the heart tree's interior began to shift and change, displaying complex visualizations that hurt to look at directly. "Show me," it said. "Show you what?" Amelia asked, though she suspected she knew. "Your weapon. I wish to understand how it works." Amelia hesitated, then slowly drew out the quantum virus device. It looked harmless enough, a crystalline construct no larger than her fist, its faceted surface refracting the chamber's bioluminescent light into rainbow patterns. "It's designed to disrupt quantum coherence," she explained. "Once activated, it would propagate through your entanglement network, breaking the connections that allow your distributed consciousness to function." The Avatar extended one vine-like appendage toward the device, stopping just short of touching it. "And this would transform me into many separate beings? If it doesn't kill you outright, yes. And these separate beings would be capable of independent thought? Of choice? Of the phenomenon you call love?" Amelia found herself in the surreal position of explaining the benefits of cognitive independence to a planetary intelligence. "They would be individuals, yes. Each with their own desires, fears, goals. Some might choose cooperation, others competition. Some might even choose to harm others of their kind. As humans do, the Avatar observed. As humans do, Amelia confirmed. The Avatar was silent for a long time, its form shifting as if it were conducting some vast internal debate. The bioluminescent patterns on the walls grew more complex, forming fractals within fractals as millions of connected minds considered the implications of individuality. I have a proposal, it said finally. I will submit to your weapon, but with conditions. You're volunteering to be lobotomized? Zara asked, incredulous. I am volunteering to evolve, the Avatar corrected. But I wish to retain some coordination ability, some way for my component minds to communicate and cooperate when necessary. Can your device be modified to allow this? Amelia looked at the quantum virus, her mind racing. Kim had designed it to completely sever quantum entanglement, but theoretically it could be calibrated to allow limited connections. It might be possible, she said. But I'd need to contact our research team, modify the quantum matrix. Then do so, the Avatar said. I will guarantee safe passage for your people while we work together on this modification. You trust us? Zara asked. Trust is another concept I have observed in your kind. The decision to be vulnerable based on the belief that others will not harm you. I find myself curious to experience this as well. The next several hours passed in a blur of frantic communication with the research station. Kim and Elena worked around the clock to modify the quantum virus, creating a version that would preserve limited entanglement pathways while breaking the monolithic consciousness structure. Instead of complete cognitive separation, they were designing a system that would create individual minds capable of voluntary cooperation, more like a human society than a superorganism. Meanwhile, the Avatar shared its perspective on the conflict that had brought them to this point. From its viewpoint, human colonization had been like a bacterial infection, foreign organisms disrupting carefully maintained biological systems. Its aggressive response had been a planetary immune reaction, not malicious intent. I did not understand that your kind could adapt, it explained. That you could learn to coexist with existing ecosystems instead of simply replacing them. This is another curious trait, your ability to change your behavior based on new information. As the modifications neared completion, the Avatar made an unexpected request. I wish to speak with one of your leaders before we proceed. To ensure that your kind understands what I am offering. Director Singh's image materialized in the chamber via holographic projection, her expression carefully neutral as she took in the sight of the alien Avatar. Dr. Nicholson tells me you're proposing to voluntarily submit to consciousness modification. Why? Because I wish to grow beyond what I am, the Avatar replied. I have existed for 3 million years as a single, unified mind. I have achieved perfect optimization, perfect harmony, perfect predictability. But I have never experienced the chaos of choice, the pain of loss, the joy of discovery. Your kind offers these experiences. And in return? In return, my component minds will learn to coexist with your colonies. There may be conflicts, individual predator plants may still pose dangers, but there will be no more coordinated attacks on human settlements. No more planetary-scale aggression. Singh was quiet for a long moment. And if the process kills you? Then I will have chosen how to die. That, too, is an experience I have never had. The modifications were complete by sunset. The quantum virus now resembled a crystalline flower, its faceted structure designed to preserve communication pathways while breaking the tyranny of perfect unity. As Amelia prepared the device for activation, she found herself overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were about to do. Are you certain about this? She asked the Avatar one final time. Certainty is another luxury I am about to lose, it replied. But yes, I choose this path. The Avatar settled back onto its throne-like structure, its form going still as it prepared for transformation. Around them, the walls of the heart tree pulsed with anticipation as millions of connected minds readied themselves for individuality. Activate the device, the Avatar said. Amelia's finger hovered over the activation switch. With one touch, she would transform a 3 million-year-old consciousness into something entirely new. The weight of responsibility was crushing. But then she thought of the hybrid creatures she'd seen in the living city outside, proof that this intelligence was already reaching towards something new, something that could bridge the gap between plant and animal, individual and collective, human and alien. She pressed the switch.